Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. Happy Wednesday. It's December 3rd, 2025, 12:45 on the dot on the clock, and we're going to get right into it. I'm using my Nightmare Before Christmas cards. I don't know, I just felt guided to use these today, honestly. So that's what we're going to do. And because I often get quite engaged in the message, I'm going to just jump right in. I did pre-shuffle, but we're just going to see where we land in a fresh shuffle here. All right, hope you're doing well. Hope the holiday season, whatever it is for you, is amazing indeed. All right, let's see. Oh, shoot. Hold on. All right, we got the eight of the eight of needles and the five of pentacles. Oh, snap. The eight of needles. Ooh, that's the eight of swords, which is never really a good, definitely not with the five of pentacles, the five of presents, which in this case is the five of pentacles. Somebody is coming undone, quite literally, so it seems, by Sally in the picture. They may be ill. They may be having a nervous breakdown, I'm hearing. They may be having a nervous breakdown because they feel stuck in some way. Oh, somebody could be either in spiritual jail or actual jail, or they could feel like they're cornered, into a really bleak prognosis or potential sentence, whichever one applies, whether, they received a health diagnosis or prognosis that isn't very promising, or they've received some type of news that they feel like they can't really do much about. Like somebody's just feeling really stuck in a bad situation here. It's like nothing, there are options, but none of them are good with this five of presents. Either way, it's going to be some detriment to their health, their well-being, mentally, physically, spiritually, maybe all, their money, their security in some way. And I'm getting that it's really taking a toll on their mind above all things, especially projecting this sense of disempowerment, because it's like a hopelessness that it doesn't feel like anything can be done. And so that type of spirit just perpetuates the worst, to literally, she's coming undone. It's like she is, this is Sally, she can sew herself back together, which is kind of the essence of the eight of needles or the eight of swords, is that you can release yourself, especially with the change in perspective or different mindset. Like it really isn't so hopeless, but this is someone seeing their possibilities or prognosis, and they're almost imprisoned themselves, because even if the potential or prognosis is bleak, you still have power over how you perceive it. Like you could get a bad medical prognosis, but still choose to be hopeful for the best outcome or good treatment or whatever, like a turnaround. You could fall on your luck financially, but still keep your mind focused on how you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps, or figure out how to get yourself out of it, or something like that, or figure out a way to get some assistance or support or whatever. But in this position, or in this mindset, there could be there could be a different way to perceive some dire circumstances, but someone more or less is like surrendering to the worst. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't look good with the Five of Presents there, but it could always shift with a mindset change. All right, let's see. What's this? The Nine of Candy. Damn. Well, I mean, at least that's, no, that's the nine of Wands. I was going to say, well, at least that's progress. No, it's the Nine of Wands. I mean, it kind of is, because, again, it gives way to the fact that there is strength to draw from with the Nine of Candles, which is the Nine of Wands. But for me, that card is always on the fence, because it says that, yes, there is strength to draw from, and yes, someone is still standing. They're not completely, down and out. However, again, it just depends on how they view their options, as to what next step they're going to make or choose to take. Really emphasis on the choice factor there. Because you could be, sometimes I see the traditional Nine of Wands as somebody that's just focused too much on the past, or what they've been through, or what they had to overcome, to actually see their way forward or see their way out, not really grasping the concept that they have a great deal of strength. And again, everything I said, that they're still standing, they're not dead, but did you die though, type of energy, which I think is a very Sagittarius card, the Nine of Wands. I think it is. So yes, like, what are you going to do about it? You're going to still stay stuck on what went wrong, or what coulda, shoulda, woulda been, or are you going to dust yourself off and move forward? So that's the question here. Let's see. The Empress. Okay. That's a great deal of power. That's a shift. That's a shift to take control over your creative energy and say, like, this may be what it looks like, but this is what it's going to be for me. Or, to just realign with the force of creativity and confidence, security that is innate to your nature, if it is so, or to call it in, or focus on building that, if not, that being the focus there with the Empress. Let me see what else is with the Empress. I mean, this could be a story of someone's triumph out of a very dire situation where they ultimately did free themselves. And as I said, the turning point was what would be done at this Nine of Pentacles. Like, when you're out of the fire, you're out of the muck and the mire, what do you do? Do you still focus on that, or do you move forward victoriously? And with the Empress here, like, she's a little tattered, she's a little beat down. She look a little wild for the most part, but it is the Empress. So I don't know. Let's see. This might be the Tower. God damn. I was just about to say, well, it wasn't a struggle though, but I was about to say, this just might be a comeback story, like what do they call it? Like yeah, I think a comeback story, something like that. But the Tower here, what's the Tower here for? It was a bit in a struggle, but they all have been sliding around, so I can't really honor that. Let's see, what's the Tower? Let me see what's next after the Tower. Oh, we got 2 after the Tower. The 8 of Presents and the 2 of Presents. I don't know. I'm kind of... Is this an Empress that has fallen from grace? I don't know. With these cards to follow. It could, I mean, especially with this Tower, with that moon glaring at me, I don't know. It feels like there was some mystical activity that could have been going on, or that was projected, that ultimately was disabled, you know, because we got the 8 of Presents, which is the 8 of Pentacles. That's like work, you know, everything is, you know, productive, highly productive, as a matter of fact. And then we go straight down to the 2 of Presents, which is the 2 of Pentacles. That's a drastic transition. It's like whatever work that was being done, maybe to perpetuate this state of disempowerment and misfortune, and maybe to project it and perpetuate it, took a big hit almost suddenly, it seemed. And it, you know, on account of that hit, it all became very unstable at that point. With this Jack, yeah, with the, even with the two of Presents, that's like Jack in the Box, right? Those 2 toys. And those are the ones that, you know, you wind them up and it's like a jump scare. You don't know when it's going to pop out. So it's like something surprisingly took a turn for the worse, took a hit. Something that was working, it was active, it was productive, it was maybe profitable, you know, was pleasing to someone. I just don't know what this Empress card is about. If this is the energy that was activating or like directing or facilitating this work, which is, I mean, it's uncharacteristic for an Empress in the upright in the traditional deck. However, the Empress here, I always say, you know, she, sometimes it's like an Empress that you just wouldn't suspect as an Empress on sight, which can be another frequency, you know, of judging a book by its cover. But now in this case, it's like everything, I'm feeling like I'm being kind of tossed around, like almost wanting to be thrown off the scent of what's really going on here. Maybe perhaps of who may have been in the center, which this Empress is dead center of all of this energy, you know, pulling the strings. Perhaps she has a string in her hand, and maybe in a very unsuspecting way, she's been the cause of the unraveling here with a certain energy or with something or someone. And again, because it's uncharacteristic of a mother figure, let's say, or a prominent female force to act with such with such a lack of compassion and nurturing, being in the very opposite energy of their nature, destructive as opposed to creative, nobody would suspect. It's like, no, not her, no way. She's a great mom, or she's a wonderful boss, or a good auntie or grandma, or whatever the heck, it may be. But like, whole time, this could have been the source of the flames, which is wild, the way that I'm picking it up. But like I said, whatever it was, it's like the force behind it all is being exposed, and the whole operation it's like the conveyor belt coming to a screeching halt, and nothing's being produced anymore. Like, completely halted on. And as a matter of fact, there's a recall. I just heard that. A recall on any products or things that have already gone out. Like, there's something deficient about whatever was taking place here, that not only are you not going to be able to output anything to profit on, but everything that was put out, a recall, return to sender, a backfire. Damn, this is interesting. All right, let's see what else. And this is the presence. Here's the Five of Presents. It's a recall. And we know, well, you may or may not know, but in the movie, this is Santa's workshop where the presents were authentic. Those are the real elves. But the Five of Presents and the Two of Presents, those are the products of when Jack and Halloween Town took over Christmas, and they were pretty much creating their concept of what a gift is supposed to be. But as you can see, literally on site, it's very distorted. Now, these gifts might have worked, might have been sufficient in Halloween Town, that would have probably been fine to receive these like ghoulish type of presents where you might get jump scared, you might get attacked because that duck ends up coming alive and attacking. But in Christmas Town, where everything's a little bit more merry and bright, these are a fright, so it's something about again, with these cards, it's always about dueling dimensions, or some type of distorted reality. And I just thought of Coraline when I'm thinking of the Empress, like how the other mother was like, she looked and sounded like, Coraline's mom in the real world, but slowly she began to unravel like her true nature, that distorted nature and her true intentions, which was ultimately to almost make a doll out of Coraline, like a collectible type. Again, distorted energy. Interesting. And captivity also comes to mind with all of these concepts in the movie, in a way, because Jack kind of captivated Santa Claus so he could take over the holiday. Coraline, the other mother, captivated Coraline so that she could ultimately like collect her. I don't even know, like, really, I guess, absorb her energy when you think about it. There's some type of distorted feminine energy out here, though. Karmic, extremely karmic. And what's interesting about, because I was thinking about this before, is like a lot of times, even in my messages, the distorted energy that I pick up on oftentimes is masculine, very masculine. So it would be interesting, you know, it is interesting for it to come up in this way where it's not just any old feminine, like not just one of the queens, is the empress, the last person you would expect to be on some BS. All right, let me get another row. We got time. The Hierophant. This Hierophant came up in the pre-shuffle like so many times. It just kept on showing its face. Hell, this could be a company too. Right up under this Five of Presents, it could literally be some type of organization. Maybe that an empress is the head of, and you would think it's a man running the organization, or an empress like a wife or something, you know, or some type of female counterpart is really pulling the strings and the husband's just the face type of thing, you know. That kind of reminds me, kind of, not directly, identically though, but it kind of reminds me of the dynamic between Fred and Serena in Handmaid's Tale, because she really was the brains behind the operation, you know, and then the men took over and it got completely distorted, you know, when the patriarch took over. But in the dynamic between she and Fred, she really was the head of household, but she submitted herself to the culture of Gilead, in which women were submissive, where they weren't even expected to read, and you know, all these other things. Like she got her finger cut off for reading, as a sign of protest and things like that. So I don't know, it's given something like that where like Fred really was kind of weak. You know, between the two of them, Serena was strong, almost ruthless at times, but you know, her character arc evolved in a way where you realize that she was a product of the world she helped to create, for the most part, that became distorted and wasn't at all. Here it is again, some type of dueling dimension, because Gilead was like a distorted projection of America. You know, it was a world within a world where they had kind of taken over the country, and citizens of the US had to either flee to Canada, or they were in Chicago pretty much fighting for their freedom and stuff like that. But it was like they were holding fast to this idea that their concept of life, you know, and how it was divinely designed was more or less being forced upon those that were not in agreement with it. Because it wasn't like, well, come on in if you agree. It was like, no, you're going to be forced to, you know, you're going to be forced into this way of life, and we'll tell you how to live and where you fit into the society or not, you know. Very tyrannical, you know. But anyway, the five of the Hierophant, the five, and yeah, that is a 5-5, so that could be significant. Some significant change underway. But yeah, the five, again, that's that recall. And what does he have in his hand but a bullhorn? So we could, as an aside, see like some massive recalls of production from big companies, you know, that you would never expect to see go under, or expect to be exposed for some type of unethical or immoral practices or things like that, or just low quality products, like i.e. Campbell, which, I mean, I haven't eaten Campbell soup in probably decades, but that level of exposure where it's like, well, what is in the soup? Now that you mentioned it, you know, it could be something widespread that we see happening, like almost, you know, as I said, look, it's something about corporate America, let's just say. Could be global, but I would definitely say America, because America's under judgment right now, unfortunately, and fortunately at the same time, because that means swift change, or significant change, but it's something that's about to happen, and it could very well be by way of this season, that we may not see the effects of until like January, or something like that. But it could be things that are going out, like excessive production that is faulty, because maybe even because of cutbacks and things like that, where there aren't as many quality control folks making sure that things are being produced well or properly or whatever. And yeah, it's going to make a huge, it's going to be an explosive impact for corporations. I'm seeing here, major ones. That's way too many. The sun, yeah, there is the illumination, and it's also shining a light on how on what really is being produced, which is this disempowerment. Oh, I just got a hit. Oh my God, I just got a hit. Okay, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. It is what it is. And I've been feeling this for a long time, and it's not necessarily anything completely new that I'm saying, but I was feeling this and I experienced this firsthand in a way that I didn't really know how to talk about before it started to become a revelation. Something with that poke, if you feel me, way back when, when it was a worldwide crisis, is about to be revealed in a much more sinister and even spiritual way than what we are seeing on the surface, for instance, the side effects or long-term effects of the aftermath. That's one thing, the physical evidence. But there's something about the mystical aspect of it, like why it was administered or what it had done to the spirit, and like the energetic effects of that transmission, and how it ultimately like shifted people's like psychological makeup, where you have folks that did, take the poke or the prick, however you want to say it, that weren't just affected physically and may have not been affected, although there's probably evidence for the physical manifestation of the dis-ease on the other side. But it's like something changed in their minds, in their psyches, after they had that transmission. And it was something that could be kind of buried in the plight of the time, like, oh, everybody's just a little on edge or a little out of sorts, or a little paranoid, or just a little affected in some way, infected. There that is, I got corrected on that, in some way, because of the spirit of the time that none of us had encountered before. But it's something much deeper, much more sinister, maybe in a way that the corporations themselves, that promoted this transmission, didn't really plan for or expect, or those that were at a certain point of promotion didn't know what they were promoting. But I don't know, I get the sense that even at the highest level, there still was like an unresolved prediction of what this transmission might do holistically to those that it was administered to. But there was a dark intention behind it nonetheless. I think maybe the un that like that variable, the unknown variable, perhaps has been just how affected folks have become, and also the backlash that it has inflicted on the corporations or those powers that were in place to profit themselves. Because if people are out of sorts psychologically, it's not it maybe the prediction was that there could be a control sensor to be manipulated to just really activate people to act in the best interests of whatever the profit may be, you know. Meaning if we just want them to spend more, then, you know, we'll have the internal influence to do so. Or if we want them to act out of sorts, act out of character for whatever reason, we'll have that internal influence. It was about controlling, like controlling the masses, or at least a large majority, to be able to kind of enslave them psychologically, to move in directions that were predisposed, or, you know, predetermined, I guess I should say. But you could never really plan for how that would take effect on the back end when it's all said and done. And it was also a bit of a rushed job, you know. I hear a horn in the distance. A bit of a rush job. I'll say impulsive, because it may have been planned for a long time, but it was impulsive in the sense that there were blind spots, like I said, unknown variables as to what the outcome would be. But ultimately, the objective of control, manipulation, even enslavement. Look, even how Jack's eyes are like, he's like glamored by the lights here. But remember, he don't belong in this town. He's in a foreign land. He's in territory. He's crossed the boundary that he didn't have jurisdiction in. So all they were blinded by was the possibilities of control and taking over and domination. There it is. More so than they were considerate of how the backfire or backlash might be experienced. So again, you might have someone that's almost enslaved, you know, to or captivated, and this is a strong force, you know, that would be captivated to pretty much do whatever you say or whatever you dictate. But what you may not have what they may not have planned for is when that energy became so distorted that it's not even in the position, you know, to adhere to certain commands or control systems, because it's so jumbled on the inside, so distorted, maybe even actually ill on the inside, that it's like it becomes like almost a defective product, you know, a deficient product that has to be recalled or just rendered useless, you know, like it's like a investment loss for whomever was so invested. So that, I don't know how that's going to come to light, but I know that's a fact, because I witnessed the psychological change in some people that were one way before that, and they may have had, I feel like what it did was like it heightened human deficiencies in folks, you know, like wherever there was already some type of void, or again, I keep saying deficiency, or defect. There it is, like defect, wherever there was already some type of maybe even emotional, because the Queen of Cups came up a lot too, emotional defect or psychological defect, trauma. I feel like that transmission was supposed to hyper exert or something, like, I don't know the right word, like almost like exacerbate that that infliction, again, to the point where there could be a cord of attachment for control. But it's like now folks kind of went out of whack, like completely went out of whack, to the point where they couldn't even really care for themselves in a way that would allow them to be subservient to certain commands. It was completely defective plan. Damn. And that's kind of what happened in Handmaid's Tale too. In a sense, it's like they never really had the control, really, that they had certain tactics in place to project fear that kept people in line in a certain way, but there was always, first of all, there was always rebellion in the spirit, because there was no agreement with what was being imposed or forced upon them. But then ultimately it caused like distortions in the mind too, where people were so unhinged, by the end of it, they were willing to kill everything in their in their tracks. No mercy whatsoever, because of the infliction of pain and pressure and abuse that had been endured for so long. So it's like they invested in one thing to serve one cause or to cure one. At that time it was infertility, but they caused a whole nother mess on their own hands. What's this? The Two of Needles, which is like the Two of Swords. And that's like a block right up under, the Eight of Candles. I don't know, that might even be a nod to those that refused that transmission. Even though Sally looks real sad, like she almost slaving for Santa here, when she was making Jack's outfit at that time to be Santa. But let me see what's on the other side of this, because I can't really tell with the Two of Needles. It could be, like I said, what was intended again, to like almost drive the masses to enslavement, or to a productivity that would be beneficial or profitable for a few, a small few, an elect or elite few. But I've said this also before, like the way it also backfires is same in all the other examples I've been talking about, is that you have the servitude, but you don't have the morale. So how great of productivity or a product are you really going to get with people that are not happy to do it, that are being forced to do it? So there's that other aspect. When you feel like you're just doing it for survival's sake, just to stay alive or whatever, it affects the quality of the product, because most of these energies, such as the Hierophant, were focused on quantity, putting as much out as possible, because we're going to make them buy, we're going to make them consume. But now you've worked those to death almost, to amplify the quantity, but now the quality is going to hell, and you still have nobody to buy it. That's wild. This is crazy. And it's interesting because, remember, I was like, it's like somebody wants to throw me off the scent. It's because it's so much deeper than what's on the surface. It's deeper than what we already know as like, over consumerism or consumption. We know the tricks of the trade with that. Many of us, even though we sometimes still participate, we know what we're getting ourselves into. But this is something deeper and darker than that. It's like stranger than fiction. Is that the right word? Is that the right term? I think so. It's like if somebody told you that injection was like a like chemical warfare for mind control, you would never believe it. You would never believe it. Because it's like, why would they do that to everybody? Or why would, but why wouldn't they? If they thought that they could profit from it and put us humans in us, not even humans, because they're human. I mean, well, I said that for a reason, but to put us peasants in our places, you know what I'm saying? Like peons. That's the arrogance. Knight of Candles, but look at this image with the big bad wolf here. And that's the impulsivity that I was talking about, like just doing it. Like, is this the way? All right, let's do it. Shoot, they knew they wasn't taking the injection, most of them. Even the ones that was presenting themselves to do so in the public eye. They knew. And I mean, I'm honestly, some on that level of leadership that we think is the highest were not privy to what's going on. It was a very select group of powers that were were privy to this information, this scheme, this plot, or whatever. But whatever. But anyway, the Knight of Candles, as I said, this sometimes to me is even like especially the Knight up under the Empress could even be like the henchman, like I said, that was kind of put out into the forefront to do the dirty work, to persuade the masses or to take charge of whatever the agenda was, answering to some other power, unseen, like the overseer, like he's holding the candle for her to keep working, you know what I mean? Like, and he's the brute force, the fear factor where you ain't gonna really want to cross this person. That's kind of the energy of the eyes and Handmaid's Tale. They were like the security guards that were armed with like machine guns, and they were ruthless, and most of them very like detached emotionally. So all they were pretty much trained to just rule by iron fist. Anybody gets out of line, for the most part, you cut them down or lock them up or whatever. There was no type of leniency or nothing in their by their hand. But they were only following the orders that were passed down to them. Sort of like the National Guard popping up all over, in cities where they really could be doing more important things, but by the president's command, they're popping up in places and so-called keeping the peace or whatever it is that they're doing. And a lot of times you see them like raking lawns and sometimes the unrest, between those two factions, the citizens and the guards, is heightened, because they shouldn't be there in the first place. It's just an irritation waiting to explode, which, what's coming up next under the tower will be interesting to see. Let's see, because we're already at 44. Yeah, that's a werewolf right there, the Knight of Candles. Shapeshifter. The Eight of Potions. Right up under the tower. So yes, like something blows up and I'm getting, folks are ultimately having no choice but to escape, run for cover, take cover, find other methods of productivity if they can, of stability, security, and provision. Whatever, like a lot of people can stand to be affected by. It's so unfortunate because corporations, particularly in this country, could add so much value to the way of life and did once upon a time, but they got so greedy and they got so um like nearsighted, I suppose, on how much more money they could make if they cut corners here, paid people less, gave less benefits, send work overseas, this and that, and it's like now they're experiencing the brunt of those decisions made in the spirit of greed because, like I said, the product, the quality has diminished greatly, and the people are not taken care of. It's like you could have taken care of your workers and your customers all alike, making sure that people had a way to support themselves, their livelihood, their families, and keep supporting your family, your livelihood. It's like they shot themselves in the foot, many of them. But this Eight of Potions, yeah, it's definitely signifying some type of, especially under the Tower, like having no choice. Like this is very desolate. It's like a graveyard. There's nothing left here. Having to like pick up and go somewhere else, maybe to to file bankruptcy, to dismantle your business, to close down and downsize or something like that. And God forbid, with this Eight of Potions, again, it's because most of the customers have been incapacitated in one way, shape, or another. Either, again, out of their minds psychologically, or practically speaking, not able to invest in, to participate in the capitalistic cycle, as a consumer. So it's like a wasteland. Damn. They've literally created a wasteland. Why? Because it was a win at all cost mentality. Not mindful of five of needles, which is the Five of Swords. Not mindful about what the ultimate end result might be, even for themselves, other than profit, productivity, power, control, domination, expansion, like more and more and more and more and more. With the Five of Needles here, that's Jack against Oogie Boogie. Now, in this case, this is when Jack was coming to retrieve Santa Claus, who had been kidnapped by his own order, first of all, but then was intercepted pretty much by Oogie Boogie to hold captive for his own ulterior motives. So this is Jack coming back to try to get him back, to fix things for Christmas. But again, it's like you just created a greater problem on your hands, trying to overstep bounds that you didn't have jurisdiction in, or that nobody gave you permission to do so. So it's, for all intents and purposes, Oogie Boogie is a powerful force compared to Jack. For entertainment purposes, of course, Jack did, ultimately win over that force and save Christmas and da 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 da. But this is the monster ultimately that the machine has created for themselves. They thought they were building something that would be the problem again of the peasants, the peons, the citizens, that were less than, so inferior. But lo and behold, it's actually a monster that they're going to, or already are having to face head on. And they may or may not, with the Eight of Presents here and the under the Five of Needles, they may or may not be able, number one, to recoup their losses on what was invested for this. They may not be able to survive the battle, and or there may be nothing left to carry on beyond them, i.e. for their children, their legacies, their empires. Like a wasteland is what ultimately they have created for themselves karmically. All right, let me get one more, and then we're good to go. And I could see this in so many different ways, because this could be corporation, but it could also be with the Hierophant here and all I was saying about some mystical behaviors happening. It could be happening at the higher level, which seems almost, foreign to you or distant from your everyday life. And it could be happening at an intimate level, where people that were close in your proximity were orchestrating something out of greed and profit, with very diabolical, like they were living in their own alternate reality by way of certain secret associations, covens, whatever, whatever the collaboration or collusion was, there was an intention to extract wealth for just because, let's just say, because there's never enough, right? The greed aspect, at the detriment and at the casualties of innocent people, ultimately. And there wasn't really much of a care about what the effects or implications may be on that innocence, as long as they were gaining profitably, gainfully profiting, as a matter of fact. And all of a sudden, like I said, that production has come, or did come, to a screeching halt, and people are scrambling, trying to figure out how, again, to recoup their losses, to liquidate their assets, to tuck away for a rainy day, to deal with the mounting monster and problem that they've created for themselves, the obstacles that they've created for themselves, maybe even facing the monster within themselves, for once and for all, finally. But there's so much being piled on, in addition to the exposure aspect with the sun, which when the sun is shining on the situation, there is no hiding. There's no place to hide when that's divine light, natural light that's being shined on a situation, which means it intends to expose. So there's that piece, in case somebody felt left out. Just know it's here. Okay, what was that? Ooh. Wow. And this is how we ending. Now it was definitely, it flipped over on the way I picked it up. It was reversed, but I'm definitely taking this up right after all this. Like, this has been the running theme for a while now anyway. And it wouldn't even make sense for it to be any other way but upright when it comes to all that I've been talking about, which is that justice will be served, and there will be retribution, reparations, restoration, maybe time to serve or repay. Like there's going to be repercussions and effects to every action, every intention that was manifested, in the 3D. There's nobody is going to escape that, especially with dark intentions. It's one thing to do something and you didn't necessarily know what you were doing, or you didn't mean to do things, like there was a certain ignorance in your activity. But this is not what we're talking about here. And I don't even know if there's a hell of a lot of grace for that, because the way universal law works is that pretty much, if it's your energy, it's coming back to you. If you created it as the cause, then the effect is assigned to you one way or another. And only way you can really sidestep that usually is by repentance, and retribution in some way that is forthcoming and proactive, not reactive, or what ultimately is being decreed and forced of you to do, after the fact. There usually isn't a lot of grace and lenience for that, not in this season. Justice is justice, and it's kind of blind in a sense. Like it doesn't have any favorites, or there's no privilege really. There's no prejudice is what I'm trying to say. There's no prejudice. It just is what it is. It's just fair. So let's see. Queen of Presents and the Page of Potions. So the Queen of Presents. Well, look at these energies though, once again. Now this is I don't know how to take this, but the Page of Potions is like the Page of Cups, right? Which in the traditional deck is always a little bit questionable, like the nature of that page. Like, I don't know, like, are you upright? What's in that cup exactly? Why is there a fish? What, it's a message or something that somebody has to say or share or whatever. But the queen of presents in this depiction, that is Mrs. Claus. That is the upright Mrs. Claus. Oh, okay. So here it is that, and look how it's falling right up under the Empress. So this might have been the distorted feminine energy posing to be, the Empress, and something that she wasn't ultimately. And then the Queen of Presents is like the authentic expression of generosity, of nurturing, that can definitely be like a mother figure. That's one of the ones between her and the Queen of Cups, who could definitely be the mother figure. Certainly the Queen of Presents though, and the Queen of Pentacles, because they're the nurture aspect, and the compassion and kindness and generosity is all there. Like all the qualities you would expect to have in a mom, like a good mom, is all there. But then you got this Page of Potions, which seems to be much more needy and even maybe a little entitled, than they should be. I'm feeling a distortion in the energy of those that have kind of found themselves in a desolate place now, are wanting to kind of beg and plead and apologize their way back into good graces because they smell that good apple pie that that Mrs. Claus is making, and it ain't nothing delectable where they are. You know, nothing's delicious in that distorted world. So that's what I'm sensing here, like this almost desperation to want to get back into the sanctity of prosperity, and by way of generosity, or maybe almost emotionally playing on the heartstrings of grace, of compassion, of good nature, you know, of nurturing, you know, the innate desire to nurture, um again, for survival's sake, but also I feel like, given his eyes are like sewn shut, to me it just feels like those that put them in a position to be almost like subservient, or like almost fall on the mercy of grace at this time, it's not really sincere. You know, it's not, most of it is not genuine. It may evolve genuinely as time goes on, and as, you know, the despair persists. But initially, that's like, for instance, practically speaking, like companies coming out, you know, executives of companies coming out after they've been exposed, giving this robotic apology, you know, that's supposed to be taken as something sincere and authentic, but really we know it's just because you got caught, and just because it's the thing to do to make a statement of your guilt, you know, an admission of your guilt. Whether you're really sorry or not is honestly what remains to be seen, especially on account of your actions thereafter. How do you fix what you broke? How do you, you know, truly repent from your ways or not, you know? And that only time can really tell with that. So if this is on an intimate level, it would behoove those that are in that position of reception for such apologies and excuses and concessions, confessions, I really meant to say, but to be thoughtful about the concessions that you make, because it's mostly with ulterior motives and on account of wanting to survive or come out of despair. Is not really authentic. It's not. It's like letting this kid come in and having some of your apple pie, but as soon as you do, as soon as you turn your back, they're going to eat that whole pie, and they're not going to, just by nature perhaps, or just by, you know, the level of despair, because they are so hungry and desperate, they're going to eat all your pie and you're not going to have any left. And this is the Queen of Pentacles, so it's like wanting to be benevolent and share your you know, your abundance with others that may be so-called less fortunate, because that's the gotcha. Those, there's still a heart and a spirit for benevolence, even though the powers that so-called be, powers that were, peace to Shavi Zane, were looking to kind of beat that down and absorb it, you know, at every turn. That authenticity still remains. It's innate. So it really is harder for a Queen of Presence or a Queen of Pentacles not to share, to have boundaries, to say, you know what, I don't think you're ready for me to share what I have, or I don't think you're in a good position to receive what I have, or I don't think you're deserving of my energy at this time, or my attention, my influence, my finances, my support, whatever those pentacles are. It's harder for a queen in that position, especially in any inflection of a true empress, to not be generous. So those on the other side, you know that they've tested that and tried it to be true, And that will be the first thing that they play on. Like, you have a duty or responsibility to share because you have so much. And as hard as it may be to conserve your energy, to reserve your energy, to stay, keep your distance or keep healthy and strong boundaries, it's absolutely what's needed for your own preservation, for those that relate to this energy, to the real Mrs. Claus, masculine or feminine, abundance innately, prosperity effortlessly. You better believe these energies, especially in their state of despair, are going to be looking for an opportunity to exploit whatever they can find, whatever they think they can connect to. So you wouldn't be doing anybody any justice, you or them, or creation overall, to mess around and share your pie and then have nothing left for you and your family because somebody done gobbled it all up when you turned your back. Nope. Or brought their distorted ass energy into your home and now it's tainted the pie so nobody can eat it. Like, no. It's a strong no for me, dog. No. Some things, some people, some places, you're going to have to find contentment with loving from a distance or loving in disconnection. Even this country itself, as you are a part of it. There are some things that, as the Bible says, to be in it but not of it. You can be of this country. You could be in this country but not be of the foolishness, And the adverse is true too. You can be of the United States but not be in the madness. In the deception, in the conflict, in the matrix, so to speak. It just takes a great deal of strength, stability, security, and confidence, which if you're in the Queen of Presence, it's and sustaining that, and especially at such a time as this, then you've already proven to have those characteristics quite naturally, as a matter of fact. So you refuse, whether it was the prick, the poke, or just the societal norms that we've been conditioned by. That Two of Swords, ultimately Two of Needles, is that refusal to be consumed by it, no matter what the promise may have been or the projection may have been otherwise. And it's definitely going to pay off. It's paying off now, and it's going to pay off in dividends generationally. Praise be to God. Praise be. In the words of The Handmaid's Tale. Praise be. All right. So anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Yeah. Take this as it resonates. It was a lot going on, but I think all of it is relevant in some way, but it may not all resonate to you specifically. So surely be discerning as to what does and does not. Leave the rest. Thank you for listening nonetheless. Bars. And until next time, as always, I'll leave you with peace.